This story was told to me by my fellow traveler, who flew with me on an airplane. A colleague at work contracted HIV. Earlier it seemed to me that I was far from those people who were infected with HIV. Listening to such stories on TV, you do not even perceive them, thinking that such an infection is somewhere far away and none of your acquaintances, girlfriends, relatives and friends will ever become infected with it. And once the following story happened to me. Several years ago I got a job as a deputy head of production, where I quickly found a common language with the team. But most often I talked with two women. They, in the first years of my work, helped me, encouraged me. We often walked together to the metro after work, went to the parks to have a rest, became friends despite the fact that the age difference between us for over 20 years. Each of them has its own stories from life, its ups and downs. Nina left her alcoholic husband, having already grown 2 children, and like an ordinary woman, she wants happiness. She found herself a new young man. He is several years younger than her, but not at all handsome. Firm, she still tries to do everything: cook, clean, solve his problems, give him money. And no matter how many people tell her to open her eyes and see how she is being used, Nina does not want to listen to anything. Natasha has an almost identical situation in terms of leaving her alcoholic husband and already an adult daughter. She met her love a little later. And then one day Natasha began to miss work often. The excuses at that moment seemed simply ridiculous. The refrigerator broke down, the owner was waiting, then diarrhea, then fever, then chills, then allergies and so on ad infinitum. The boss put up with such antics for more than 6 months, and then still fired her. A few weeks later, she called me in tears, was very drunk and said that she went to the doctor, got tested and was diagnosed with HIV. She didn't know how to accept it. And it is really very hard when it seems that life is over. Natasha called all her acquaintances, whom she contacted and who could have been infected from her, in order to warn. After her call, I was shocked for several days. But I was just silent about Natasha. Only after a week I realized that I had to make a decision. What should I do? After all, Natasha worked here, we had injuries, with blood. There are people who helped and could get infected if there were fresh cuts on our hands. The first person I told was a colleague at work, Vita, with whom the 3 of us were also friends. And you know, she wasn't even surprised. Having said that, she already knows everything. It turned out that Nina had contracted HIV a long time ago from her boyfriend, who constantly cheated on her. At the expense of Natasha, she assumed the same thing, that she contracted the infection from her chosen one. And I began to sort out all the moments of our communication, and you know what I remembered. When Nina entered the office, Vita always stood behind her, wiped the table, washed her hands. I remember that at such moments I even made fun of her. Then at some point she stopped walking with us. And once Natasha secretly told Vita that Nina was infected with HIV, this whole situation was unpleasant to me. In fact, working at our production facility for HIV-infected people is unacceptable. It turns out that all my friends at work knew about Nina, but they were silent and protected only themselves, otherwise they didn't care that others might get infected. On the same day, I went to my boss and told everything. A few days later, Nina was fired and paid a decent amount. Natasha's beloved was tested for HIV, and it turned out that he does not have HIV. I can only guess under what circumstances my friend could have been infected and from whom. After all, Nina and Natasha worked together for a long time. Vijay, on the other hand, still works in production, although personally I believe that such people who live by the principle "this does not concern me" should also be fired. If you liked the story, then like it and subscribe to the channel. There is still a lot of interesting things ahead.